Good evening, Jeopardy fans, and welcome to hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel presented by thejeopardyfan.com. Once again, and as always, I am Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion. Unfortunately, we had a couple of last-minute cancellations for tonight's panel, but we still do have a panel for you this evening. My panelist right here, I have Shannan Younger. Thank you so much for joining me, Shannan.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be having a one-on-one discussion tonight. Shannan, of course, was on the March 29th episode of the show. Now, was that taping after Alex got back? Was that correct, or was that?
That's correct. It was his first day back.
His first day back. So.
Actually, in the middle of the show, he sort of slipped and stumbled a little bit down the steps at the second break.
Oh dear, that must have been, big panic amongst the crew there for sure.
Serious panic. And as my husband said, he thought, oh God, if she kills Alex, she'll never live this down.
Oh dear. By the way, if you're
watching, actually did go and get a bunch of pillows and put it down at the bottom of the stairs to break his fall, should it happen again. It was funny.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So if you're watching here live, there's the YouTube live chat. There's also hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel on Twitter. I can take your questions on either of those, and if I like them, I'll ask them. But my first question that I've been leading off with here on hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel lately, most Jeopardy contestants start out as Jeopardy fans, and most Jeopardy fans have kind of an origin story, as it were, as to how they became Jeopardy fans. So, Shannan, how did you become a Jeopardy fan in the first place?
I think mine is pretty traditional in terms of watching it with my family when I was a kid at night after dinner. I grew up outside Columbus, Ohio, and we had the Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy duo going there. So, while I was doing the dishes or whatever, kind of the family would play. And then it never really occurred to me to try out at all. Didn't cross my mind until I married a former Quiz Bowl champ. And then he was very encouraging. So.
Oh, very nice. Has he been on Jeopardy yet?
Not yet.
Is he trying, though?
No, I think so. Okay. Yep, he took the last quiz. So.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Now, yeah, fingers crossed for sure.
Harder than I am, so he deserves to be there much more so than I do.
Well, there's hopefully still plenty of time while Alex is still around hosting.
Yep, exactly.
He definitely seems to still enjoy it, so that's definitely a good sign for him.
For all of us, yes.
Mm-hmm. So you obviously mentioned, growing up in Columbus, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy back-to-back. That obviously does not happen in Chicago, where the show airs at 3:30. How different is it living in a place like Chicago where the show airs in the middle of the afternoon?
It's profoundly different. Not many people watch it that are in sort of my circle of people who are busy with jobs and kids. But I have to say DVR has been sort of life-changing. So... I know a fair number of people who will just record it. And then sometimes people will binge watch, which is sort of fun too, or you can follow along with people's streaks, or if you're catching up on a weekend or on the nighttime kind of viewing spree. But it was funny when I was on because people were texting kind of over a very long period because it was in Chicago, but then later elsewhere. So.
Yeah, because Chicago, at 3:30, and then, the 7 o'clock friends, the 7:30 friends.
Exactly.
I heard one joke a few years ago that the DVR was invented so people in Chicago could tape Jeopardy during the day. So
I believe.
So
we put it to good use.
Yep, for sure. So how did you prepare for the show once you got the call?
Let's see. I definitely went to the archive where all the questions are posted. Mm-hmm. And truth be told, confession time, I had fallen off of watching it a little bit. Life had just gotten busy. But I actually think it worked out fairly well that I could kind of binge and do a bunch of concentrated ones. So we would watch a couple shows a night. And, as time went on, the closer we got to the show, I got a little more serious in terms of standing up the whole time and trying to be better with the buzzer practice. And then a friend also kind of silly sent me the Jeopardy question a day calendar. Mm-hmm. And we kept that in the car, and my kid would quiz me on the way to and from whatever practice or pickup we were going to. So that was 365 questions there.
Very nice.
It did print out a list of presidents to memorize on the plane ride out. And that apparently did not work because I did not get Millard Fillmore, and I was really mad at myself.
Well, you certainly had one of those games where certainly anything pretty much going different could have ended up with the game in your favor. So,
yeah.
Now, how did you find the signaling device? Now, it seemed like you and Alex were about, according to the numbers, you and Alex Lapinto were about equal on the signaling device. Emily was just a little bit stronger than the both of you, but how did you find it?
It was not my friend to start with. It took longer to become one with the signaling device than I would have liked. I was getting a little frustrated at certain parts that it just wasn't quite working. I think too, like just figuring out the device also, and just the timing and all parts of it took me longer than I would have liked, for sure. So by the second half, it was definitely getting a little bit better. But
So were you more of a lights person or Alex's voice?
I tried Alex's voice in the first half, and it did not seem to be working for me. When I switched to the lights, I felt like things got a lot better.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, in terms of media coverage in Chicago, I know Tracy Swartz of the Chicago Tribune puts together an article a lot of the time when a Chicago area contestant goes on Jeopardy. Now, does she get in contact with the contestants at all, or does she just watch the show and put together an article?
You know, she and I were connected on Twitter. So we had a little bit of contact before, and she sent me a text probably a week before I aired. Maybe it was definitely before it had aired. So I was assuming she got a press release or something. She just said, "Are you really going to be on Jeopardy?" And I said, "Yep." And then saw her article later. So I assume she was confirming for that.
Okay. So, obviously, I know that I'm aware that the Chicago area in particular has, and I mean, there are some other areas of the country as well that have the kind of smaller alumni groups. I think, the Albany region has a good group together, and they bring in everyone that, goes on the show from that area. But I know Chicago has a really large kind of alumni group. So can you talk about that a little bit?
You know, I'm a pretty new addition, so it's been really nice to know that there's so many locals. I think I felt a little bit of pressure when they added me right before it aired, saying that everybody from Chicago had won at least once, and I did not continue the streak. So that was a bit of a shame that I think I brought on the Chicago community. But you know, they've been super supportive. There have been different talks of different opportunities for volunteering at different trivia groups or different meetups that they have. So it seems like a pretty amazing group so far. I'm really fortunate to be in it.
Have you had a chance to go to any of those meetups yet?
You know what? I have not. I did get to meet up with Dan Carden in Indianapolis a couple weeks ago for a quick cup of coffee. So that was super fun.
Okay.
So interstate Jeopardy hangouts. So, because he had been in my contestant group that day that I filmed, but he was held over until the next day.
Okay, so. Very nice. Yeah. Now, were you happy with airing on the Thursday, as it were, having the chance to actually see 3 games in the audience beforehand?
I don't know that it was either here or there for me. I certainly didn't mind. I think it was enough time to maybe get a little bit nervous, or to, I think some of the final Jeopardies had maybe shaken my confidence a little bit. I'm ashamed to admit I did not get the Beatles one. And then when I realized that made me, I think, a little more nervous, but it was kind of nice to go right after lunch. So it was kind of cool.
I'll circle back around to lunch in just a second, but I do want to ask something, because you did mention that your confidence had been shaken a little bit on Final Jeopardy, and obviously you were in a situation where Emily bet everything in Final Jeopardy, and had you done the same, you would have tied her. Now, Was your bet in Final Jeopardy kind of influenced at all by the fact that you hadn't done very well from the audience in Final?
Yes. Both by that and by the buzzer. I did feel like Emily was pretty consistently beating me on the buzzer.
Okay, so in that
Knowing that if
case,
it went to a tie, that it had not aired yet, so nobody had seen the tiebreaker.
had they kind of told you that one was coming, or
They did. They mentioned that it had happened recently and that it was super fast and over in a flash, and nobody seemed to know what had happened or what had hit them.
okay?
Was sort of how it had been described to us. So, which makes sense, knowing that they've got a really short time frame. So my theory was that it would have to be a pretty easy question, just because they need to finish up their show.
Mm-hmm.
So then, to me, that just comes down to a buzzer race, and I didn't feel like I was winning those.
Yeah, and it seemed like between you and Emily, she definitely had the upper hand on the buzzer in your game. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So circling back around to lunch now, obviously you've mentioned that you made it past lunch and got lunch on Sony's dime at the commissary. So what did you end up having on Sony's dime for lunch?
I think I had a chicken sandwich. I do remember that Glenn, the contestant coordinator, told us half jokingly, but I'm pretty sure not, that we were not allowed to have turkey because the tryptophan would make us all a little low energy.
Well, that's interesting. I've actually never heard that line before out of Glenn. So that's
yeah. He's like, no turkey, no turkey.
No
like,
turkey.
Okay,
okay.
I'll skip the turkey.
What was the favorite part of your contestant experience?
It's a great question. I probably should have thought about that more. I really, really liked it. Just being on the Sony lot was really cool. I will say that at lunch, I was looking for people in different costumes because I think at my audition in Kansas City, which is one prior to this one, Jimmy talked about how one time at the commissary, they were filming, I think, Angels and Demons, and all the extras were dressed as cardinals for some papal election scene, and the commissary was full of them, and that was one of his favorite moments. So
okay.
I was looking for them, but did not see them. But I think getting to meet Alex and having him tell me that I played a really good game was really gratifying and exciting.
Nice. Now, so that's interesting. Do you remember what day you mentioned? Yeah, the Kansas City auditions there. That would have been June, the end of June, early July of 2015. Do you remember which specific? Do you remember when specifically that audition was?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Because interestingly, yeah, because I also auditioned in that myself in that area in Kansas City back in 2015, unsuccessfully, obviously. But now, had you auditioned since that Kansas City audition?
Yeah.
Okay. So
there was a second one in Chicago that was in August.
Okay. Yeah, I think quite a few people recently have been called from that for the show.
Yep.
So
I think it's been a big group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but no, I don't think we were in the same group in Kansas City because I don't recall Jimmy showing up. So
okay, yeah, I remember. I want to say maybe it was a Sunday morning.
I will say unless you were really early on, I know mine was a Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah. So unless they were there for like a few, a large number of days, but I mean,
I think they were doing sports Jeopardy auditions too.
Right, they were, and then they had. I know, I remember there being auditions the Tuesday and the Wednesday for sure, maybe the Monday too, but
maybe it was a Monday.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, we didn't get. I didn't get Jimmy at my audition, but I made up for it in. Well, that's fine because we got better than Jimmy when I auditioned in November in Toronto. Alex showed up, so.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes, so yeah, he was getting the Order of Canada 2 days later.
Cool. He did bring pictures of that and was showing those at one of the commercial breaks.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Between shows, I think, but he looked very proud and distinguished.
Mm-hmm. So, I've asked you about your favorite part. Now, I'm going to ask you the other half of that. What was the least favorite part of the experience for you?
It was nerve-wracking. It was a little scarier, I think, than I thought it was going to be. And when one of the stage people was like, 8 to 9 million people are watching, have fun. And the music started. I was like, oh my God, what have I done?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, 8 to 9 million people. Well, there aren't 8 to 9 million people who are watching Jeopardy live panel tonight, but there are
There
eight to
should
nine.
be, Andy.
Maybe eventually that'll happen.
I have faith.
Yeah. A comment for sorry, I'll just no I'll save that question for later, for just a little bit later on. My next question for you, how did you find the reaction online on social media to your appearance?
Um, I don't think it was anything unexpected. Several offers of dates, which was interesting. Some people were a little more brazen, I think, than I thought they would be. So people commenting on my anatomy, like in a direct response to my tweet that I was going to be on the show. So that was sort of interesting to explain to my teenage daughter. So it definitely opened up some conversation. Some people seemed very, very angry at my betting in a way that I did not completely expect. I thought maybe they would not completely be what they would do, but I didn't think it would make them irate in a way that it did. So
A lot of Jeopardy fans have unrealistic expectations, I would say.
I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. And I thought it was interesting that a lot of people were saying, like, what's the difference between $1,000 or $2,000? That's nothing. And I was like, well, in my world, that's actually not. Like, mm-hmm. That's, $1,000 is fairly substantial, and 2,000 is even more so. Like that, when that's in your bank account, I think that does make a bit of a difference. And I think that did sort of enter into my betting, that if I bet all of this, I could end up with nothing in a category that I wasn't feeling super confident in. So I actually sort of expected more of a response to the first set of categories at the beginning of the show, because I thought those were pretty interesting. And a few people mentioned it, but there wasn't nearly the discussion that I thought it might start.
I was actually surprised by the lack of discussion about that as well. I think that
because when I saw it, I was like, holy moly.
Well, it's interesting because I think that the kind of viewer that would be upset at such a at such a statement is not really the viewer that would be watching Jeopardy.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I mean, there were a few people, though, that were, I noticed on my social media feeds, because for the sake of seeing what other fans are saying, I follow the Jeopardy hashtag, and I actually follow the replies to Jeopardy to see what people are saying so that I have an idea. And I saw a couple of people who were confused. It was interesting. More of the J6 players were confused by the categories, because I don't think a lot of them realized that the J6 categories actually or for the Amazon Alexa skill actually match the daily categories on the show. So they thought Amazon actually were up to some nefarious tricks and not actually Jeopardy.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah, and I have to say it was a little tricky. Like, there was the question about people of Mexican descent, and I was 95% sure that the answer was Chicano, but I wasn't 100% sure, and I thought that is not a risk that I want to take.
Right.
Especially in the case that I'm wrong, that's a pretty horrible mistake to make. So
Yes, exactly. If you're wrong, you're going viral, and it's
exactly. Yeah, that was very much in my head in a way that I did not expect going in, but I thought I do not want to be viral.
Mm-hmm.
So I passed on that one.
A comment from Matt Carberry saying, especially with regards to the 1,000 versus 2,000, it's even more substantial when you're paying your own way to get to and stay in California to appear on the show.
Absolutely. And my husband and my teen daughter came with me, and we had a fantastic trip. And that was the difference between covering that trip and not. And I don't want my fun adventure to be something that we lose money on if there's a way that we can break even.
Right. And I think that one of those things that may actually help to get more players betting for the win, as it were, is if Jeopardy were actually to increase their consolation prizes such that...
Oh, completely agree with that. Had it been more, I would have been far more inclined.
Right, like so. Like had third place been like 2,000 and second place been 3,000 or 4,000, you'd have been much more inclined to have bet it all in Final Jeopardy,
without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's really interesting to see, to know, and I wonder if that's something I think I'm going to revisit later. Especially, I'm definitely going to be revisiting that later probably on my own website for sure. Especially after hearing that.
It's worth exploring for sure.
Now you wrote something for responsibility.org, I believe, after your appearance.
I did. One of their campaigns is called Ask, Listen, Learn, and it's about helping parents start and continue the conversation with their kids about alcohol and why it's not a good fit for kids. So when I was thinking about my experience, it was actually the day after I was realizing that there were some interesting parallels between my experience on the show and my experience as a parent talking with my daughter.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. And so I will, what I'll do, on the page at thejeopardyfan.com where you can access this video, I will, if you can send me a link to that, Shannan, just so that I have it, I will make sure I link to that.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. How different is it watching Jeopardy now? Do you still watch the show since you've taped?
I do. Mm-hmm. Yep.
How different is it for you watching now compared to before?
Oh, it's definitely different. It's just knowing what's going on and wondering what's going on in their heads, and it's fun. I had actually read that some people found it not as enjoyable watching after they've been on, but that hasn't been my experience. It's almost sort of enhanced it somehow, feeling like, okay, I've done this, and a lot of times I have to say it's sort of a relief when there's hard categories, and I think, oh, thank goodness I didn't get that, because I have to say, preparing for that month, watching it, I'd always be a little panicked of, oh, if I get that, that's going to go really badly. Like it was a much higher stress level, and with that gone, it's really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. And a comment again on the consolation prizes from Matt Carberry, the $2,000 that Ronnie O'Rourke won as the first consolation prize in May 2002, adjusts for inflation to only $1,441 today. So...
good math, sir. Yeah.
So yes,
cool.
3,000 and 2,000 might be more appropriate, but yes, I definitely think that number needs to go up for sure. Do you have any regrets about the experience?
Regrets? Oh yes, I have a very long list of regrets. I wish that I had been a little more confident going in. I wish that I hadn't thought so much about what other people were going to think, or the whole going viral thing. Like if I'd gotten a couple more on the ones that I hesitated on, maybe that would be better. Let me think. What else? I don't know that I regret betting what I do. Like there are days when I'm sad I didn't bet at all. But knowing the buzzer stats, I honestly don't know that. I don't think the outcome would have been all that different. So it might have been nice to have people think that I was a better player, but I do wish I could do it again, knowing what I know now. Like, I feel like I'd be better at the timing and better at the whole, just managing too of the overwhelming. Like, there's a lot of sensory input going on when you're up there. And, I think by the time you've settled into that, the show is almost over. So, but overall, I think it was fun. So I definitely enjoyed it, but yeah, I wish I could do some things differently.
And also, I mean, that's another consideration that so many of the people who have all these opinions on how to play Jeopardy is that they have no idea what it's actually up there on stage. Even though people try to tell them what it's like up there on stage, they're still not completely they're still not completely aware of what it's actually like.
Yeah, and even having watched 3 shows, it was still different than what I thought it was going to be when I got up there. So, I think there's just something of until you've done it, you just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's really quick. Like, I think people assume too that you have all the time in the world, and you don't.
No, it pretty much what you see on the broadcast is about how quickly it'll go.
Yeah, I think I was surprised on somebody who had put up on YouTube, but I think it was less than 20 minutes. And I actually felt a little bit better seeing that I was like, oh, well, yeah. It did go really fast because it was short.
Yep. Take out all the commercials and you've got a 20-minute episode. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it flew by. So It was interesting too. Like, I feel like maybe my focus wasn't stellar because a lot of the questions I would think of different people in my life of, oh, Bollywood, my friend Amy loves Bollywood, or oh, Saudi Arabia, my friend Angie lives there. And I'd be like, no, focus. But I also kind of like to think of it as maybe those people were just with me in the moment, helping me out.
So, you've just mentioned that those are those two of the clues you're most proud of getting on the show, or was there another one?
Oh, I have to say, there were some really great ones. Like, overall, it was kind of close to my dream Jeopardy, other than the Reese Witherspoon category, which I would have killed for. I loved getting New Kids on the Block. I had their posters on my door when I was in 8th grade. But the one I'm most proud of, hands down, would have to be the one about Notre Dame.
Okay.
So I went there for undergraduate and for law school.
Ooh, very nice. So that's, you definitely, so you were very happy to be able to give that shout out on television.
Thrilled.
I'm pretty sure a few people noticed that as well, if I remember correctly from the episode as well.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious. And completely fabulous.
Oh, absolutely. So, was there anything you thought I might bring up tonight but didn't, or any questions you may have for me?
I think you were pretty kind about not asking about the questions I missed, so thanks. There's definitely ones that I did not read closely on one of them, and there was another one where I thought one thing and something else came out my mouth.
Well, you're doing, the way I see it, you're doing me a big favor by agreeing to come on and do the interview. So for me, I don't feel like it's a good idea for me to start, a grilling session, as it were. So
I appreciate that. Thanks. And the internet's done a lot of it for you. So although it was interesting that there were some friends who got a little contentious about, well, you really should have done this. Which is interesting too, because I feel like my friends know me pretty well, and I'm not a big bettor. I'm a pretty conservative person. So I feel like I played the game pretty true to my personality, both for better and for worse.
Well, on that note, I think that's a great note to say thank you very much for coming on #Jeopardy Live panel this evening.
Thanks so much for having me. I loved our chat.
No problem. And for those of you, the next week I'll be bringing on the college championship players. That'll be happening next Monday night at 9:15 p.m. Eastern. Once again, for Shannan, thank you so much for joining us on #Jeopardy Live panel this evening. I am Andy Saunders. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Have a great night.